Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I am Saoirse, I'm the Cozy Soul Knits. That's my dog Lena. She was being chill just a minute ago. She's gotta be in frame, I think, for this. No? Maybe? Anyways, welcome back to my channel. I'm Saoirse, I am the Cozy Soul Knits over on Instagram, and I'm excited for this video because we are starting a new series, hopefully. I'm not sure, like, we're gonna see how this goes. I'm hoping to do a couple of these and, you know, if it, not in terms of views, like if it does well, but just if I'm enjoying it, if I'm, you know, getting a few of you at least kind of chatting with me about books, then I will consider it a success and we'll keep doing it. But we're gonna be doing a knit and chat where I talk to you about all the books that I've been reading recently and what upcoming books I plan on reading. I want to try to do this monthly, however it's like the middle of a month, so we'll see how it goes. I'm not the most organized when it comes to filming on time and editing and all of that, so maybe we'll try to adjust it so that I'm doing it, like we'll get back to where it's mostly like per month, but just, you know, sometimes life gets crazy, so we'll just see how it goes. And yeah, I've been wanting to do this for a while. I've been talking about doing it for a while. I've had a lot of things going on recently that I won't get into in this video. Just lots of things in my personal life that have been going on, and so this is kind of the first time that I've, you know, had the time and also felt like chatting about these books. So I do have a couple of things I want to chat about before we start chatting about the books. The first is that I am wearing my Never sweater. This pattern should be out by the time this video goes live, so I will leave it, the Ravelry page, linked down below if you are interested in this. This is a pattern by Kalila, who is more Copy Callie here on YouTube, and I knit mine in Drops Flora and Kid Silk in the colorway Petrol, and I test knitted this, so I just thought I would mention what I'm wearing because this is a knit and chat. So yeah, we're bringing together knitting, which I love, and reading, which I also love. And for anyone who is new here, I'm also a writer. I'm not published yet. I'm still working on it. I'm honestly nowhere close. Like I only have first drafts and the start of a second draft for one of my projects. But I do have a creative writing background, and I've been writing since I could write. So not to say that I'm like an expert or anything, I'm not, but I have a little bit of background in terms of writing craft. So just to give you guys a little bit of just a little bit of my background, I guess. And I needed to do a couple disclaimers before we start this series. I don't think I'll say this in every single episode, but we're gonna start off by saying this is the first thing that I want to be very, very clear is that I read for entertainment. I do occasionally read nonfiction books if there's a subject that I want to learn more about. You know, I'll read a self-help book here and there, or just random books if there is a topic that I'm interested in. So I do sometimes read for learning, but most of the time I'm reading for entertainment. So what that means is that I'm not here to really critique books. Like, if I enjoy the characters and I enjoy the world building and I'm having fun spending time in this made up world or this version of, you know, the real world or whatever, like if I'm enjoying the world that I'm reading about and the characters that I'm reading about, then I'm having a good time. And to me, that's a good book. I don't care to pick apart the sentence structure or what an author could have done better with pacing or this or that. I mean, yes, I might talk about those things here and there, but overall, when I'm saying, oh, I really enjoyed this book, it's because it's got good characters and I liked the world building, and that's I'm not that hard to please, I feel like. I will say some of the books that I did enjoy reading aren't necessarily like the most well written, but I'm still, you know, I still enjoy them. I still give them 5 stars on Goodreads and all of that. Also, as a writer, I really don't want to be overly critical of books because I know how much goes into books, like into writing them. And I mean, I don't even know everything that goes into getting a book published because I haven't even gotten that far. But I know that a lot of work goes into writing. I know how like close a writer is to their writing, like how personal it can be, even if you're not writing about yourself. Like it's still a piece of you, it's your, you know, creative baby. Like, so I'm really don't want to be overly critical of someone's creative baby. Like that just seems mean, just coming from another writer, if that makes sense. So when it comes to like my Goodreads, like when I'm reading a book on Goodreads, for example, I usually don't ever give books less than 3 stars. And the only reason I will give a book 2 or 1 stars is if it's got something problematic in it. Like there's a book that I'm going to talk about in this where I found there to be some underlying misogyny kind of showing through the writing, and the male love interest was misogynistic, and I don't like that. So, and I just find that to be gross because generally speaking, you're supposed to really like the male love interest in a romance book, right? Like you're supposed to like them, and it wasn't like dark romance or anything. So like this, yeah, like that's where I draw the line is when the male love interest is misogynistic. It's like, nope, I don't like. So I'll talk about that a little bit later, but it's things like that where I will kind of be a little bit like more so critical of the book when I see kind of things that are a bit problematic in my opinion. And then the other thing to just also touch on this is that when I am talking about books that I don't like, I really want to do a good job because I see so many people in book talk who, when they talk about a book they don't like and you liked that book, they make you feel so stupid or like dumb or wrong for liking a book. Like the amount of people who criticize Fourth Wing and Iron Flame in such a way where it makes me feel like, oh, okay, well, I liked it. And then I just feel, I don't know, like on the one hand, like I know I don't need to listen to what they say, but it just you kind of leave their TikTok feeling like not great because you liked the book that they were hating on so aggressively. So when I don't like a book, I really want to approach it with the knowledge that there are people out there who did like it, and I don't want to make them feel wrong for having enjoyed it. So that's kind of my, I guess my little disclaimer. I guess the other thing to mention is that I primarily read fantasy and romance or romantasy. I don't really stray outside those genres, and yeah, that's just kind of, you know, again, because I'm reading for entertainment, I don't force myself to read things that I'm not interested in. And I have no problem DNFing a book as soon as I realize that I want to DNF it. There is a book, and I will talk about it in this video, where I DNF'd in the 2nd chapter that quickly because I just knew I wasn't going to enjoy it, and I don't think that there's anything wrong with that, and I don't think that it means the book is necessarily bad. It's just it wasn't for me. And we'll see how this progresses, but right now I'm not loving contemporary romance. I feel like the last few contemporary romances that I've read have really been some misses for me, so I don't know. I have a book that that came through the library that's contemporary romance. It was someone actually, I mentioned that I wanted to do this type of video and someone gave me a recommendation, and so I immediately went to the library, and then I went online to the library and got an ebook, but then I was like, you know, I don't know if I'm like in the mood for this because I just haven't been in the mood for contemporary romance, but we'll probably still read some contemporary romance, and I do have a couple, I think, to talk about in this video. But yeah, so I think that's it. I hope I mentioned everything. I'll try not to do this whole thing every single time we do a video like this, but I just figured I needed to say a few things. And again, if there's a book that I read and I talk about in this series that I didn't like and you loved it, it does not mean that you have bad taste or that I have bad taste. We just like different things, and that's okay. And I really want to keep that perspective when I'm talking about books that I didn't like. Then the only other thing to mention before we take off here is I'm going to be attempting, I've never done a knit and chat before, so I'm going to attempt to knit on this, which you probably can't really tell what this is, but this is the Uptown Tea by Tori Yu, and I am using this Knit Picks yarn. It's their Muse fingering weight, I believe, and this is in the colorway Poetic, and I am knitting this. And I think I can do it while I talk to you. We'll see. I have a sock on standby just in case, in case it doesn't work out. But I hope you guys enjoy this. So we'll see. But grab your knitting, grab a beverage if you so need. I have my water here ready to go, and I'm nice and cozy and warm. And I'm gonna get my phone so that I have my Goodreads open so I can look at what I read. And I'm going back a ways because I just have so many books to talk about. So we're gonna, oh, now they're all out of order though. Okay, I think I have them in the order that I want to read that, or that I want to talk about. So I'm going back to October because there is a series that I wanted to mention. And let me, oh my goodness, am I gonna be able to knit and talk about these? I'm on the lace part on the sleeve, so I'm like, maybe I should finish. And I'll be putting the books, so most of these books are, I read the ebook version, so I'll pop the cover on the screen as I chat. But the first two books are two in a series. I think the third book comes out soon. Comes out, I think, this year, like earlier in the year. The first book is A Kiss of Iron, and it is by Claire Sager. Don't know what my dog is doing. And it is by Claire Sager. And then the second book in the series is called A Touch of Poison. So I read both of these like end of October, beginning of November, and this was a really interesting story that I enjoyed. So it is a romantasy book, and as far as spice goes, like it's a little, I wouldn't say it's a slow burn, but yeah, I wouldn't say it's a slow burn, but there's like build up, you know, which I appreciate that. I cannot stand insta love. The main character, her name is Kat, and she is kind of in a bad situation. So she's married to this guy who's just pretty much awful. He is traveling around the world, just like spending all their money, sleeping around, like he is not home taking care of his estate, taking care of her, anything like that. So they're in a lot of debt, and so she is trying to, you know, take care of herself. But this is a world where women are not like allowed to own property, they're not allowed to have jobs, things like that. And so she she has taken it upon herself to support herself by robbing rich people. So she'll kind of wait in the forests, so kind of along little, you know, these little highways, to rob people. And she's riding, so instead of horses in this world, they have saber cats. I think that's right. And so she will just be on her saber cat, like waiting, you know, for people to kind of come through so that she can rob them. And she's kind of infamous in this area that she's in. And one day she is out looking for people to rob. She ends up robbing this guy, and he doesn't have like, I don't think he has money. Does he have money? He might have some money on him, but he also has something else on him that I can't really remember what the word for it is, but she takes it and he's really pissed off that she took this thing because it's obviously a very personal item. And she can also tell after she's robbed him that he is Fae. And Fae don't really live in the area that she lives in, it's mostly humans, but there's like a Fae realm. And so yeah, she kind of knows like she is in some serious danger. So he like chases after her. She's able to get away, but she's kind of like looking over her shoulder for the next few days because like she's convinced this guy's gonna find her. Then someone from like the palace shows up on behalf of the queen and is like, hey Lady Catherine, you have to come be a lady in waiting for the queen. And she's like, what the hell? Like, why would I have to do that? Like, this is so random. So she's convinced that the queen knows that she's this like infamous robber and that she's going to, you know, be thrown in jail or executed or whatever for her crimes. But she gets to the palace, she becomes a lady in waiting, and she finds out it wasn't actually the queen that wanted her to be a lady in waiting. Is that what it's called? I'm like overthinking, I'm like, is that not what lady in waiting? That's what it's called, right? Yes, that's what it's called. I don't know why I was like having trouble. So she finds out it wasn't actually the queen that wanted her to be a lady in waiting. It's actually the queen's spy master. And he offered, oh. Not sure where this just came from. Okay, oh, it must have been sitting there on my coffee table. Okay. So it was actually the queen's spy master that brought her to the palace, and he wants her to, you know, kind of pretend to be a lady in waiting, but she's actually going to be spying on this Fae who has come to the palace. So there's a bunch of Fae who have come to the palace to win the queen's hand in marriage. And so they've traveled with all of their, you know, emissaries and whatever. So there's in particular one Fae that the Queen's Spy Master is really concerned about. And he wants Kat to essentially seduce him and find out, you know, what he's doing there. What is he up to? So of course, right, the Fae just so happens to be the one that she robbed, right? So as you can imagine, you know, there's that whole thing where he's like, oh, you're the bitch that robbed me. Okay. And she's like, shit, I really didn't want to run into you again because you're probably going to try to kill me because I robbed you. But of course she's supposed to seduce him. So as you can imagine where that's going to head to. I really enjoyed this book. It was a while ago that I read it. And then the second book was really, really good as well, in my opinion. I did really quite enjoy it. And this series actually has a few other books in the same like universe. And I noticed as I was reading, I was like, these characters that are like side characters, they're not super, like they just pop in for a moment or two and they were like seeming like they weren't super important to the actual plot, but they seemed very important characters. And so I looked and I was like, oh, it's because they already have a whole series. So I kind of read this like out of order, but you don't have to read the other series. And then there's a few standalone books that you also don't have to read before you read this one, but I may go back and read those at some point. But yeah, I really enjoyed the series because there's, you know, a little bit of like political court, you know, intrigue and spying. There's a murder mystery, like there's, yeah, this book has a lot going on. And then the second book, I don't want to give anything away, so I won't say too much about it, but I really, really enjoyed it, and I'm excited for the third book to come out. I don't know when it comes out. I don't know if I'm gonna like drop everything to read it when it comes out, but like I will get to it as, you know, like pretty quickly, I think, after it's published. But yeah, I enjoyed it. And I think if you're looking for a good romantasy, I think that this one would be a fun read. I would definitely recommend it. And I feel like, yeah, I really like the main character. I remember really liking her. I feel like she's also a little bit older than most female protagonists in romance books. Like she's not, you know, freshly 19, like she's been married. I don't remember exactly how old she is, but you know, a little bit older, I think, than most romantasy books. So that was kind of refreshing. And I do like the male love interest. Bastian, I feel like has a really like a lot of depth. There's a lot of like backstory to him that you find out a lot more in the second book. So I don't know, I really enjoyed it and I would definitely recommend. So I'm gonna move on to the next book that I read, which is Iron Flame. I'm not gonna talk about Iron Flame too much because if you are a fantasy or romantasy reader, you've probably at least already heard of Iron Flame or Fourth Wing, and you've probably either already read it or you know that you don't want to read it. And I will say I don't mind people critiquing this book. I think that's fine. But there are just so many people in book talk that really are just so overly, like, aggressively critical of it. It's one of those books where I'm like, well, I really liked it, and I feel like I just feel so, it kind of just grates on me that people will like really take that stance of like, how dare you like this, basically. But yeah, it's by Rebecca Yarros, if you didn't know that, and Iron Flame. So I really liked Fourth Wing. I got my friends to read Fourth Wing right before Iron Flame came out, and they really thoroughly enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed Iron Flame. It's one of those things again where it's like, I like the characters, I like the world, I like spending time in it, and it's a fun read. Is it the most well-written book ever? No. But I'm not expecting it to be. I don't need it to be. That's I think what I want to say on that. I just really enjoyed it. The ending, I won't spoil anything. The ending was felt a little rushed. Like I didn't quite catch what was happening. And then I was like, wait. And I think pretty much all of my friends had the exact same, and my mom read it as well, and she like completely missed what happened. And she was like, I'm confused. And I was like, I was to go back and reread it and see it, like reread the ending and just see if you kind of catch what's happening. It was weird. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. We have to wait so long for the next book. So I'm just kind of like, why did you do that to us? But I really enjoy this series. I liked it. And that's, I think, all I'm gonna say about it, because again, if you watch any book content, you've already heard about it. If you haven't, if you're like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. Fourth Wing has dragons, it's spicy. Xaden is the main male character, and he's pretty good. I don't think he's Rhysand level book boyfriend, but he's nice. I mean, he's not nice, but like I like him as a, you know, as a love interest in a book. I will say their back and forth in Iron Flame was a little annoying, because they were like, I'm like, okay guys, like you're literally both wrong. But anyways, so I'll move on. But I personally, I like Fourth Wing and Iron Flame. I do see that it has a potential to kind of become like From Blood and Ash. That series quickly got off the rails and got to a point where I was like, I cannot read this anymore. So I see what people are talking about when they criticize this series. it's not that I don't see it, it's just that like so far it's still enjoyable to read, so I'm going to continue to read it. Anyways, I'm going to move on to another series. This one is definitely a romantasy, and I read this at the beginning of December. And the first book I actually read in one day, like almost in one sitting. Like I got up to go to the bathroom and stuff, but pretty much in one sitting. I started it and I just stayed up. I think I started at like 5 in the evening and I just read all evening and I think I finished it at like 1 or 2 in the morning. And it is Lords of the Hunt by Kate King. And it's the first in the Wild Fae series. And then I also read Lady of the Nightmares, which is the second book in this series. And then the third book is not out yet, unfortunately. So this book is not my usual. I will say I'm not really a reverse harem why choose girly. I tend to just kind of be like, okay, well, obviously the one guy is the right choice for her. Why do we need these other guys? Like, I don't have an interest in the other male characters. Like, there's usually one that I'm more intrigued by, and I think that the relationship between, you know, the main character and the one guy is always like more interesting, has more, you know, depth, and it's kind of just like, okay, the other guy's only purpose is for spice, and well, that's fine, it's just not my personal preference. So I kind of went into this book not realizing that it was a reverse harem, but I was actually pleasantly surprised. It's only 2 guys, so it makes it a little bit more bearable for me personally. I'm just not like the biggest fan of the ones where there's like, you know, 4 or 5 guys. I'm like, that's too much. Anyways, no, if you enjoy Why Choose, good for you. I love that for you. And I will still read them occasionally, usually by accident, usually because I'm like, oh, I didn't realize that this book talk recommendation was for this Why Choose book. Like, I just thought it was, you know, whatever. But anyways, this is one I don't know if there was any book talk recommendation on it, or if I just kind of saw it on Amazon Kindle Unlimited and was like, cool, yeah, I will read this. I don't really remember, but I'm trying to, it's been a while, so I don't remember the main character's name. Oh, it's Lonnie. Okay, yeah. So Lonnie is a human, and she lives in, I can't remember what the like kingdom or whatever is called, but she basically lives in this place where the Fae are in power. The, you know, royal family is Fae. She works at the palace with her twin sister, and they're basically like maids. And Lonnie specifically, so, well, I'll back up a little bit. So kind of like a big theme that the book starts off with is that Lonnie and her sister were raised by their mother and told like repeatedly, like their mother had like this one rule, and it's do not capture the interest of a Fae. Like basically if a Fae notices you, it's all over for you. And Fae in this book, I did read a review where somebody was saying like the Fae in this book are really reminiscent of like Holly Black's Fae, where they're like ruthless, and I think that was the author that they were talking about. They're ruthless, they don't give a shit about humans, like they're, you know, immortal and bored with their immortality, and, you know, killing a human is like killing a fly, like they don't care. So it kind of is reminiscent of like older Fae books, kind of like back in the, you know, back in the day maybe, I guess. And so, you know, they're not like evil, but they're also not good people. And some of them are evil. Anyways, so they've, you know, Lonnie and her sister, they've been told their entire lives, like, do not capture the interest of these Fae. Lonnie also hates Fae, like she hates them so much. So her job in the palace is always usually like she's doing jobs that keep her away from the Fae, like royalty and people, because like she just basically like can't keep off her face like how much she hates them. whereas her sister can kind of pretend that she's not bothered by them. So she is usually like serving, you know, at their dinners and parties and things like that. So the story really begins when Lonnie's sister asks her to cover for her at this party. And it's for the Wild Hunt, which is basically, let's see. Or is it called the Wild Hunt or yeah, the Wild Hunts. So basically every time, I think it's every year. I can't remember. It's like every year there are the Wild Hunts where it's like a kind of a series of trials where people can enter, and it can be humans, it can be fae, and if they can kill the king or queen and take their crown and then like make it to a certain point, like a certain goal, like, I don't know, like geographically, like if they can cross a boundary with the crown, they've won, and then they would become the next king or queen. They're having the start of these trials, and there's like a little party beforehand, and that's what Lonnie's sister is supposed to be like serving. She's supposed to be a server at this party, but she's been sick, so she asks Lonnie to cover for her. And prior to this, Lonnie was out with not her boyfriend, but her like friend with benefits. They were hooking up in the forest, and the two fae princes were in the forest too, and they were glamored to be invisible, but Lonnie saw them and they knew that she could see them, so she caught their interest. So she goes to show up to this party, and you know, she's serving, and the two fae princes, or princes, not princesses, princes, are like, oh, hey, it's that human girl that could see us in the forest earlier. So they start messing with her. And one of them is like really, really not nice, and the other one is like kind of flirting with her, but kind of bullying her a little bit. Anyways, so she is kind of being harassed by these two fae princes. When all hell breaks loose at this party, the party is attacked by these rebels. I don't want to give away what happens next. It all happens very early on in the book, so I don't think it would be a spoiler. But basically, this attack that happens changes Lonnie's life forever. Through a series of unfortunate events, Lonnie ends up with the crown, and basically becomes the queen. And the first book kind of follows like what happens after that. And I think the main reason that I was so like captivated by this book was I couldn't figure out what the guy's motivations were, because the two love interests are kind of at odds in this first book. Like, they are not on the same page when it comes to what to do about Lonnie. And basically I was like, I have to know what they're thinking, like what is going on with them. And the mystery of that just kept me very intrigued. So that's why I stayed up so late, like reading this book and finishing it so quickly. The second book, I would say I remember not loving it as much. It started to feel like the one love interest, again, was only really there so that there could be spice earlier on in the series. And the second book was where I kind of fell into the thing I usually fall into, where I'm like, you know, I kind of wish it was just the one guy. I just think it would be more, I don't know, and then it could have been like a really slow burn, and would have just been more satisfying when they finally get together. But I still enjoyed it, and I think if you do like Why Choose or Reverse Harem, like, you would probably really like this. And if you're usually one like me to kind of stay away from that type of romance book, this one only has the two guys, so like there's that. But then I also worry though, because the two guys are related. They are cousins, and I'm like, there can't be any like spicy parts where they're both in on it, because I feel like that would be gross from that standpoint since they're related. So I'm like hoping that that does not happen. But yeah, so anyways, the second book did leave off on like an interesting part, like not a cliffhanger, but like I was kind of like, oh, okay, like that sucks. Like what's gonna happen next? Like I'm intrigued. So I will be reading the third book when it comes out. Again, I'm not sure when it's supposed to come out. We'll have to see. But I think it was sometime earlier in 2024. So hopefully, you know, it'll be out soon and I don't know if it's a trilogy or if there'll be more books, but I am intrigued. I do want to continue reading this series and I did enjoy it. I'm trying to think if there's anything else to say about it. But yeah, I think if you want kind of a faster paced romantasy, this might be that for you. I read it just like it was, you know, a while ago, almost a month ago, so I'm kind of like, what's happening? Okay, then I have a book that I rated very poorly. And I did not like this book, and I should have probably DNF'd it, but it was kind of a weird thing where I started reading it before Iron Flame, but then Iron Flame came out, so then I, of course, dropped everything to read Iron Flame, and then I tried to come back to this book, and I really had to talk myself into it, and I was like, maybe I should have just DNF'd it at that point, but I was like, oh, I'm so close to being done. But this is the book. It's Devious Lies. It's by Parker S. Huntington. And again, I want to reiterate that if you really loved this book, like, please do not be offended by me not enjoying it. The first thing I will say about this book is that the spice was not for me, first and foremost. The book was way too long. And then the ending for me was kind of a like, okay, why is this relevant? This is, I guess, also first book in a series. I'm not sure what the other books would be. Like, I think that they would follow different couples, but there weren't really all that many other couples in this book that were remotely important. I think the main character's name is Emery, if I remember correctly. It doesn't say here. And then the main male character is Nash. So I'll just set the scene. So the book starts when Emery, I think, is like 15. And I was worried about this. I was like, because it is an age gap. They're like almost 10 years apart. So that would put him, you know, almost 25 or whatever, when the book starts. Something like that. So it starts off with Emery being a teenager, kind of just sets up like basically Emery's parents are rich. She lives in this like, you know, big house with them, and then on the property, Nash and his parents and his younger brother live there as well because they're the help, basically. And Reed and Emery are best friends, and I think the first few chapters start off with basically kind of setting up that there's something that happens. I won't get into it, but Nash and Reed used to be really close. They're no longer close. Something happens. They don't get along anymore. But Emery and Reed are still really good friends, except for she is in love with him and has been for a really long time. So fast forward, again, this book is way too long in my personal opinion. So it takes a while to get to like the inciting incident, basically, like the actual, where the story really starts. There's a lot of setup, which some of it I feel like is not warranted, or could have been done in flashbacks like throughout the book. It just takes a really long time for the book to get started. But basically, fast forward to Emery being 18. She's in love with Reed. Reed has told her that he has broken up with his girlfriend. So what does she do as his best friend? She doesn't go over to Reed to like be a good friend and like comfort him and help him through his breakup. No, she decides that that this is the best opportunity for her to go over and basically try to seduce him. Not really sure, but like profess her love to him, and then she's like has a whole plan. She's gonna sleep with him, and then they'll be together. And he's literally just that day broken up with his girlfriend. It's like, girl, give him a shot to like recover first. You know what I mean? So she sneaks over to the house that they live in that's on her parents' property. She sneaks over. She goes into his room. He's in there in bed, presumably. So she like sleeps with him, except while she's sleeping with him, she realizes that it's not him, it's his brother Nash, who's again almost 10 years older than her, who for some reason is in his younger brother's room for some reason. I can't remember what the reason for that is. So they, oh, sorry, that's my phone. They finish and then kind of like throw the lights on and are both like mad at the other, being like, what the fuck, why did you just do that? But it's like, okay, but you also partook in that. So they're like really mad at each other, and Emery was like, why did you just like sleep with me? Like, because he didn't know it was her. Like he thought it was someone else sneaking into his room. And yeah, so I don't know. Very weird and not quite believable thing that happened. So they decide, they're like, we're never speaking of this again because the age gap is huge, and like also if Reed found out, he would be like so upset because he really hates Nash. So then fast forward again, Emery's parents, it was discovered that they were embezzling from the company that her dad owns. And so her dad is like in hiding or something, and her mom has like frozen her trust fund because she's not like doing what her mom wants her to do. So Emery is like broke. And Nash also knew about the embezzlement, knew what her parents were doing, thinks that Emery, being a teenager, also knew what her parents were doing. And even if she had known, like, I'm also like confused why he would hold it against her, because like, what was she supposed to do about it? She's like a literal child at the time. So he hates the entire family because they embezzled basically all this money, ruined his parents' financial future. His dad ends up dying. He blames this whole thing on Emery's family and decides that Emery, despite being like, again, a literal child when all of this happened, he decides that Emery is also at fault because he thinks that she knew about it. So he hates her. They're not in contact, okay? Emery and Reed are still friends, and so Emery, she's dead broke, she needs a job, so Reed's like, hey, Nash, owns all of these hotels because he, somehow became a billionaire in this time. So he is now a billionaire. Nash owns just a line of really luxurious hotels, and Reed's like, hey, I can get you a job as an intern. He won't even know about it because he's the CEO. He's not going to know that you're working there. So she's like, okay, fine, because she's kind of desperate. So she goes and takes this job, and of course runs into Nash. And Nash then takes a very special interest in the project she's working on because he wants to essentially make her life hell, and get back at her. Now, again, this book is so incredibly long. So there's also more to it, but basically it is supposed to be kind of an enemies to lovers type of thing. And yeah, as far as the synopsis and like recap goes, that's as far as I'll go. But the reason that I rated it so low is because as I was reading, I realized like why I didn't like Nash, because the whole time I'm like, usually, you know, the billionaire, like bad boy, like type of character is like, I love it. But I didn't like him, and I was trying to kind of figure out like why, and it finally occurred to me as I was reading why would I just like had a little epiphany, and I was like, this is why I'm not enjoying this book. And there is some underlying misogyny that I think that this author needs to take a look at, because, and this is something that I feel like happens in a lot of romance books, and I don't know why it needs to happen. Like, just a public service announcement to romance authors. Stop doing this, please. There does not need to be a side character who is throwing herself at the love interest. I don't know why authors seem to always put that type of character in, like the boy obsessed, like slutty bimbo type character. Because first of all, like, you know, and the character also always hates the main character, right? Like, and I don't understand why we need to have that type of character, because it just reduces women down to just, you know, people who are just existing for male validation. And I have never actually met an adult woman who behaves like that. I'm sure that they do exist, but they're also not just that. They're a victim of the patriarchy. Like the pick-me girls, like as much as I don't like them, they're still a victim of the patriarchy. And hopefully, you know, they'll heal and realize and then become like their most authentic, powerful versions of themselves. So I'm really about women supporting women, and when you have that type of character, I just, I don't like it. And then the main character, it's always in the books where the main character is quirky and not like other girls. And that's why when I realized, I was like, this is why I'm not liking this book, because I don't like the main character and I don't like the love interest for that reason. And then the way that Nash treats this side character, like, yes, she is annoying. And if she truly existed and was doing the shit that she was doing, I think it would be warranted to like be mean to her and tell her to get the fuck out. But the way that he talks to her is also really misogynistic. And there was one scene in particular that just really gave me the ick, and I was like, no, I do not like this character one bit. And I probably should have DNF'd there, but I was like, I just forced myself to keep reading for some reason. But yeah, I cannot stand when the love interest is misogynistic. It's just like a huge no for me. And what else do I want to say? The ending didn't really make any sense to me in this book. I won't get into it, but the way in which the two characters reconcile at the end, I didn't understand why, like, Nash chooses not to do something, and it's supposedly supposed to like be because he loves Emery, but I didn't understand how it was even relevant to how he feels about Emery or about their relationship, so it didn't make sense to me personally. But yeah, I don't know, I think this book was like 700 pages, if I'm not mistaken, for a contemporary romance book, so it was just extra long. There were times where the main character was like having conversations with the ceiling, and I was like, I don't think this needs to be included. I think that this could be edited out. So yeah, it was just not a book that I enjoyed. If you've read this, I would love to know your thoughts on it. But yeah, I was like, that's just a little bit of a no for me. And I think that's all I should say about it. I should probably move on. The next book I also didn't really enjoy, and I did DNF this one because I was coming off of Devious Lies, and I was like, okay, I gotta find a better book to read, because I can't keep reading books I don't like. So this next one is The Last Storm by J.D. Linton, and this one seemed so promising because if I do recall correctly, so it follows the main character Ara, I think I'm saying that right, and she basically lives in like a human kingdom. Her father is the general of their armies, and then there's like a border, and across the border is where the Fae live. And she kind of has like, you know, that like she wants to go and explore. She wants to like see what else is out there in the world. She doesn't want to be stuck in like the little town that she's in. She doesn't want to just like settle down and get married. So when her father is like ends up forcing her basically to be engaged to her, what used to be her best friend, and now she's like, yeah, no, I'm not gonna be friends with you anymore because like you agreed to marry me when I don't, you know, I don't want to marry you, kind of a thing. So that was icky. So she is basically forced to get engaged to her, again, friend, who's not really her friend. And she decides, well, she's often sneaking out of her home to go into town because she just wants to be free. So she does this again. She like goes to the tavern. She sneaks out to the tavern. And this is kind of where I kind of got started to get the like, I don't know if I'm gonna keep, you know, reading this, because she goes into the tavern and of course who is there? The most handsomest stranger she ever did see. And like instant attraction. And you get from his point of view that he realizes immediately that's his mate. And she doesn't know because she's human, so she has no idea. But he knows. And so he, the, you know, love interest kind of follows her around, realizes that she's human, and he is like, ew, gross. So then I'm like, oh, okay, it's not insta love. Like maybe there's something here. Like it's gonna be enemies to lovers. He hates humans. She hates Fae. She's scared of Fae. It'll be a nice enemies to lovers. But yeah, so then he realizes that she is the general's daughter, and he's like, okay, well, we can use her. And since I hate her because she's a human, I don't care if she's my mate, I will totally kill her if I have to. He kidnaps her, and he's actually the king of these Fae people, and so he kidnaps her. And yeah, that's kind of where the story finally kind of picks up. But it kind of still felt insta-lovey to me, so I DNF'd it because I just wasn't really enjoying it. There were some other things too that were sort of like big major plot things that would kind of just like casually be brought up. Like there's this random side character that tells the love interest a really important piece of information that he just happens to know. But like, I'm like, how would you know that? How would you be sure? Like, so it just seemed like too convenient, I guess. And I just wasn't really enjoying it. I didn't really feel like the two characters had a lot of chemistry. So I decided to DNF. I just wasn't feeling this book. But I don't know. It could be something that maybe gets better. You know, maybe later on in the series. I don't know. I don't know if there is a second book out yet. Yeah, it looks like the second book is out. The third book is not. So I don't know. You can, if you've read this, let me know. It was just one of those ones that I saw on Kindle Unlimited, and I was like, let me give it a chance. And I just didn't quite like it. So I moved on to another book, which this one was interesting because I got this recommendation on Book Talk, and it was basically this book talk that was like, hey, if you liked Fourth Wing, here are some other books that are similar. And I don't necessarily agree that this book is like Fourth Wing. I think that there are some similarities for sure, like similar themes, but I feel like it's just, I would not equate it to Fourth Wing. Also because it's young adult and Fourth Wing is not, so I wouldn't necessarily like relate them exactly. But it is The Black Witch by Laurie Forrest. And I really enjoyed this book. I actually also read the second book, and I literally just finished the second book last night. I really am enjoying the series. The second book, where it kind of left off, doesn't have me like running out to, I do have the next book, the third book in the series. I do have it checked out from the library as an ebook, but I didn't I'm not like, oh my gosh, I need to start it right away. But overall, I'm really enjoying the series. This is like the first YA series that I've read in a while, I think, that I've been enjoying. So maybe I don't need to say this, but there's no spice in it. And it is a little bit of a slow burn, and I need to change the battery because I've been talking so long. I don't really remember what I was saying, but I don't think I really gave any sort of synopsis. So this book follows Ellerin Gardner, and she is the descendant of the Black Witch. So it's her grandmother, and she looks exactly like her grandmother, like carbon copy. So everybody assumes she's gonna be like super duper powerful. In this world, the different, you know, people kind of have different, like each different type of people have like a different magic system, or like a different, like there are the gardenarians, sorry. And they are mages, so they have wands and they do wand magic. There's also like fae, but there's kind of like different levels of fae. So you have like full-blooded fae, and then people who are kind of half fae. You have lupines, who are basically werewolves, and then there are a different kind of race of people that I think their magic is like considered sorcery, like they're called sorceresses. Yes. And then there's also a group of people who are a group of women that are called the Amaz, I believe, and they are like, they only allow women to live there, basically. So there's a lot of different, this world building, first of all, is insane. If you love a fantasy book with like just a ton of like intricate world building, this series is definitely for you. It's so in depth, and there's like so much history, and I feel like there's probably like a ton of like history and world building that like the author did that like we don't even get to necessarily see in the series, because it's just so like intricate. And anyways, so in Gardneria, I don't know if I'm saying any of these right, women have like zero power. The eldest male in the family basically is kind of in charge of everybody. And Ellerin and her two brothers live with her uncle Edwin. And he's kind of kept them, you know, like he moved them out of the city, kind of, you know, to a more rural area, and has kind of, you know, had them live very simple lives, kind of sheltered. But her two brothers do go to university in a different, the university is in a different country, different kingdom, I'm not really sure exactly what they're called. But they like come home for like the summertime, basically. And Ellerin really wants to go to university, but she hasn't gone yet. And it's kind of up to her uncle if she's going to go or not. So when her aunt shows up and is like, hey, you need to get Ellerin essentially married off. Like, she's old enough to be married off. She's not. She's like 17. And they call it, in this world, it's called wand fasting. So you're like fasted to someone, and which kind of is like getting engaged, and then you like would get kind of, you know, married later on. But it's not called like your wife or your husband. They're called like your fast mate, I think. Her aunt wants her to get wand fasted. And her aunt is like this kind of, you know, rich, like kind of snotty politician from the city, and obviously has different motives than her uncle. And her uncle is like, whoa, whoa, no, she's not getting one fasted yet. She's way too young, and I want her to go to university first. So he sends her to university. And meanwhile, her aunt is like hell-bent on getting her wand fasted to this one guy that she thinks would be like a really good match for Ellerin. Anyways, Ellerin goes to university and basically is confronted by her very sheltered upbringing, right? Because at university, it's not just her people that go to this university. It's all sorts of people. There's lupines, who are the, you know, werewolf shifter type people. There are Celts, who are from Celtania, which, like, they are the kind of like mortal enemies of the Gardnerians. There are these things called Icarols, not things, people, who have wings, and they are like the outcasts of society. Like, everybody looks down on them. And Ellerin quickly realizes that she has a lot of biases and a lot of prejudices. And I think this book is super interesting because basically everybody in this book is racist. And that might seem like, whoa, you want me to read a book where everyone is racist? But it's kind of cool because you watch as all of these different people realize their biases and realize how wrong they are about each other and are undoing all of this generational shit. And so it's kind of cool in that way. I will say, like, this is definitely a YA book. The themes are, you know, there's a little bit of naivete to the characters. You know, Ellerin can be very childish at times. She can be very just naive and a little self-absorbed at times, but she is unlearning all of her prejudices. And yeah, so at times it's a little annoying because you're like, can you get there faster, please? But it was also kind of a cool read in that way, because since these are all made up races, you're not bringing in your own biases and prejudices into the book, so you can kind of like really clearly see when the characters are biased against one another. And I don't know, I think that this is one of those books where, like, you know how they say, like, if you're someone who reads a lot, you're generally going to be more empathetic. And I feel like it's because of books like that. Especially when you read them when you're younger, you become like more open-minded. The book deals with, you know, essentially like this society is kind of devolving into fascism, and you're kind of witnessing it happen kind of firsthand through the characters, and but also seeing how these characters kind of come together despite their differences. It's very wholesome, I feel like, in that regard. And yeah, there's just I don't know, there's a lot in it. I can't quite tell. It seems like there's a bit of a love interest, but not really. I'm intrigued to see like where it goes, but it's kind of like, it doesn't really seem like a love interest to me. And not just in the, like, you know, Twilight love triangle way where you have like the, you know, the whole time you know it's always going to be Edward, but Jacob's there. Like, I guess it's kind of like that where you know it's gonna be the one guy, but the other guy's kind of just there. And he does serve a purpose, and his character is actually kind of very intriguing. But I'm like, I don't know where it's going. And I don't know if it was supposed to be a love triangle or if it was just, that's just what, like, that, I don't know what I'm trying to say. Anyways, yeah, I'm trying, what else do I want to say about it? Again, the world building was crazy good. It is a little, at parts, I think, a little bit drawn out, and especially kind of has that, you know, YA vibe where you're kind of like, okay, like you're a little naive, like can we kind of get to this conclusion a little bit quicker? But it is really interesting to kind of like watch, I guess, like just the thought process of these characters and how they all kind of become friends despite like initially hating one another. There's dragons in the book, so like I don't know if that's why the book talker that I was watching kind of like was like, oh yeah, it's like Fourth Wing. It has like some similar themes in terms of like the, you know, like just the racism between different groups of people. Like in Fourth Wing, there's kind of that, you know, mentality of like, we're not going to help these other people because they're not our people. There's also a lot of like propaganda that, you know, people in charge are very corrupt, so like it does have those similar things, but I feel like that's kind of a staple of fantasy genre. Like there's always the people in charge are like actually evil, or you know, and like the rebels end up, you know, coming in to save the day. I think that this series too is also kind of interesting to read, especially right now with what is going on in Gaza, with the genocide that's happening, and seeing that mentality of like all of these people that are different from us are evil, like seeing, because there's a lot of that in this series of like people who just blanket like generalize all those people that are different are evil and need to be taken out, and seeing also history repeating itself is a really big theme in these books as well. And again, it's kind of crazy because like that's what we're seeing happen right now, history repeating itself. So yeah, it just seems very poignant right now, I guess. What else do I want to say about it? I think the writing is really good. The pacing is a little slow at times, but I didn't really mind that. I think the only kind of thing about it that I guess like I would have loved it if this wasn't YA, not for the spice, but just for having, you know, the themes be a little bit more mature. But at the same time, I also don't mind that it's YA. So, yeah. But what else do I want to say about it? The second book I just finished yesterday. This is The Iron Flower, and I do have it from the library. I just finished it yesterday, and the ending was like just confirmed things for me that I had kind of suspected from like the beginning of the first book. So that was satisfying because I was like, okay, finally we got, like I knew this was gonna happen, but I needed it confirmed that I was right. So yeah, I enjoyed this. I will say there wasn't, like, it's all very, like, you kind of see everything that's gonna happen before you're like, yeah, you kind of, I don't know, you kind of know, like, there weren't any huge plot twists that, like, really caught me off guard or anything. Like, I kind of, you know, knew that certain things would happen, if that makes sense. But it was still really, really enjoyable to read. Again, like I said, I'm not, chomping at the bit to read the third book. Like I will, but I am, I think, like wanting to take a little bit of a break from this series. But I am excited to read it. But I feel like the third book is where it's gonna get like much more intense and things are really gonna start to happen. The first two books again are a little bit slower, but not necessarily in a bad way. So I would 100% recommend this series. I've really been enjoying it. If you want a really good, well done fantasy, YA fantasy book, I highly recommend checking it out. And yeah, I am excited to keep going with the series. I believe the first 4 books are out, but there is a 5th book, and the 5th book doesn't come out until 2025, and that's another reason why I kind of want to like pump the brakes on it a little bit, because I don't want to get to the 4th book and finish it and then be like, oh, I have to wait 2 years for the 5th book. So no. But out of all of the books that I've read recently, I think that series is the best that I've read. And if I had to recommend, like if I could only recommend one of the books to you, I feel like it would be that one. I really, really enjoyed it. And then I had to place the second book on hold at the library. I actually ended up checking out both the ebook and the physical book from my library because the ebook hold wasn't coming in fast enough, and then the second book was in the library, so I placed a hold on it because it was at a different library than the closest one to me. So they ended up kind of coming in at the same time, and so I just had both of them, so I was kind of like switching back and forth between reading it on my Kindle and reading it the physical copy. But yeah, while I was for the second book, for the Iron Flower, but while I was waiting for that, I had a few other books that I read. So the next one that I read, so again, I just finished this last night, and then so in between reading the first book in that series to that book, there were 4 books that I read. One of them I did DNF at like chapter 2, and I will talk about it. But before I read that one, I read A Court of Sugar and Spice by Rebecca F. Kenny, and this one was kind of a miss for me. Don't get me wrong, I don't mind every once in a while a smutty romance book that just gets straight to the spice. Like, I think they have their time and place, but this one just wasn't it for me. This is an interesting book. I feel like I have a lot to say about it, and I feel like some of you would like love it maybe, but it is a Nutcracker retelling, which just instantly I was like intrigued. And I will say, as far as the retelling portion of it goes, I don't know that I'm the most qualified to speak on like that aspect of it, because I remember going to the Nutcracker Ballet when I was little. I remember being kind of terrified of the Rat King, and that's like all I remember. I don't feel like I know the story at all. Like I just don't have a memory of it. So as far as like if the retelling was, I mean, I don't think it was super accurate because like the Nutcracker is actually a fae prince, so I'm sure that that's not actually part of the original story. Anyways, it follows 2 sisters. There's Clara and Louisa. So Clara is the kind of more level-headed of the sisters. She is an artist, but she also is a little more like timid and reserved and kind of, you know, wanting to play it safe. Whereas Louisa is more like chaotic and out there and a bit crazy. She's very impulsive. And a wee bit selfish. Not a wee bit. She's extremely selfish, and I did not like her. So Clara is very like considerate of her sister and like wanting to take care of her, look after her, help her out. Louisa like rarely gives a shit about what Clara needs or wants, and just kind of does whatever Louisa wants. And Clara is like, she's an artist. She's got talent. She wants to, like, she has, you know, things that she wants to do. Louisa's personality kind of just revolves around like seducing people to sleep with her. That's pretty much her entire personality, which is like, that's fine. You sleep around, that's cool. I don't really like when characters in romance books, like when that is their entire personality, is just that they're like, yeah, I just like to sleep around. Like, who cares? Like, it's like, no one cares. Do what you want. We just don't all need to hear about it. You know what I mean? Like, that's fine. But yeah. So anyways, Clara and Louisa's father dies. They get sent to go live with Drosselmeyer, who I think is from the actual story, but I don't know anything about that. But anyways, they go to live with him. They quickly realize something is up with this dude. You know, he might not be such a great guy. So they discover that the Nutcracker that he has supposedly invented is actually a fae prince he trapped. They're like, okay, cool. We gotta help this guy, like, escape. So they help him escape, and they also to the Fey realm, right? So they escape to the Fey realm with him, and are kind of immediately met by the Rat King's soldiers, and they're like, crap, we need help. And then the Nutcracker Fey Prince is still cursed. Like, they were able to like get him back into his Fey form, but he will quickly turn back into wood, basically, if they don't keep like feeding him Louisa's blood. When they're in the Fey realms, Clara gets herself into a spot of trouble and is saved by the Sugar Plum Fairy, who is kind of this, you know, he's got like pink hair and earrings that have like ice cream cones on them or something, I don't know. And he's kind of immediately interested in her. So Clara and the Sugar Plum Fairy, they're a little bit insta-lovey, and I wasn't a huge, you know, I'm never a huge fan of that, so that was a little bit of a no for me. I liked their characters, but I didn't really like how quickly things progressed between those two romantically. A little bit of a fun fact, I don't think I can say this on camera. The Sugar Plum Fairy, when he finishes, apparently his stuff tastes like a different sweet each time. It'll taste like a different dessert. In case you wanted to know that. Anyways, but I think the kind of the big issue that I had with this book was so I'm more of a slow burn girly. Like, I really enjoy a slow burn. It's just more satisfying. And I thought that Louisa and the Nutcracker Prince dude would be, you know, more of a slow burn, and like that it would be satisfying. But I just didn't enjoy their romance, and I didn't like either of their characters. So Louisa's whole thing is like, oh, I sleep with everybody. I just like to, you know, sleep around. That's my personality, which is like, okay, girly, like, you do you, that's fine. And then the Nutcracker Prince dude is like slut shaming her, and I'm like, well, that's not okay. So like, immediate no. And then like, he also has repeatedly told her that he is not interested, and she continues to try to seduce him. Not because she likes him, but just because she wants to like seduce him. So she's, you know, like, so that's kind of gross, because then I think about like, well, if the roles were reversed, it would be like, ew. Like, no means no, you know? So she keeps trying to seduce him, and he keeps telling her like, I'm not interested, and she just doesn't stop, and it's gross. It's like, I don't know. I did not like it. And then when they do finally get together, it was like they just kind of decide to, like, it didn't make any sense to me. Like, nothing really happened. Like, it didn't feel like this build up towards them finally finding common ground and stuff. Like, they just kind of are like, oh, okay, just kidding, we actually like each other now. And it just felt very abrupt, and I don't know, I did not like either of the characters, and I just didn't like how they ended up, you know, getting together. So that was just a bit of a no for me, but I think, not to say it was like a bad book or that other people shouldn't like it or anything like that. It was just not something that I really, you know, ended up enjoying. I'm kind of glad that I read it, because like the whole Nutcracker retelling was very, just intrigued me for some reason. Like, I was like, okay, the Nutcracker, like, how is that gonna work out if he's like this wooden thing? But so I wanted to kind of know about like how that part would be handled, and that part was interesting. I do kind of wish that this was a longer, because it is a series, but it's one of those ones where it's sort of like each book is its own, follows a different couple type of a thing, so it's not really a series. In that regard, it's just kind of like like each book is a standalone that you could read by itself, but they're all like in the same setting. The world building on it was intriguing and I wanted more. And I thought like, man, this would be cool if this was more of a fantasy book, instead of a romantasy book where you get like more of that world building and you get to spend more time in the world. And because the magic was really interesting, like the sugar plum fairy like makes all these candies and if you like chew them, like different things happen, and it was very cool. So in that sense it was really, really creative. So I did like that part of the book, and like I was like, I wish this was more of a like a fantasy because it's a really cool world that the author has created. So like that would have been cool. But yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of either relationship, and therefore, you know, the like spicy scenes and whatnot just didn't really weren't really my favorite. And yeah, so anywho, also this is considered, I believe, by the way, this and this is something I should have said, please check your trigger warnings for any book that you read that could potentially have some triggering things. This book I think is considered to be a dark romance, so please keep that in mind. I didn't find it to be too dark, but if you've maybe never read dark romance, you might be like, oh my gosh, this is too much for me. So please, you know, check the trigger warnings with the book, because I do believe it's considered to be a dark romance. And I think that was a something that I saw a lot of reviews mentioning, that they thought it was going to be kind of a cozy romance, kind of whimsical and cozy, and it is not. So sorry, I should have said that earlier, but it's not like a cozy thing. Like, yeah, it's just not. And there are some more mature themes, so please keep that in mind. But as far as like dark romance goes, I didn't really consider it to be super dark, but I don't read a ton of dark romance, but I do read a little bit of it, and so I've read things that are much darker than this. So yeah, anyways. But yeah, so overall, like, wasn't a huge fan of this book, but I did think that what it was trying to do, it did do well, if that makes sense. I just personally wasn't feeling any of the romances and the characters. Like, I did like Clara and the Sugar Plum Fairy. I wish they I wish they had been the main couple. That was like the more slow burn. That would have been nice. But yeah, this is one of those books where it is mostly spice, so also keep that in mind if that's not your vibe. Okay, so I'm gonna move on to the next book, which is the one that I DNF'd at chapter 2. And I don't want to talk about this book as if it's badly written. I just knew immediately it was not for me. So I don't really have too much to say, and I'm not going to really give a synopsis of it, but it is Ledge, which is the first book in the Galatian trilogy by Stacey McEwen. And I had to DNF this book because of the way that it was written. It's written in third person omniscient, and I just cannot read third person omniscient. It's the head jumping thing. I don't like it. It's confusing, and I am just not a fan. So when I see that in a book, it's kind of an immediate no for me. If you don't know what I'm talking about, like, third person omniscient is when the narrator knows everything that every character is thinking, and I think it needs to be done really intentionally. And in my personal opinion, I don't think a fantasy book is the right type of story to be using that point of view in. I just think it's too confusing. You have too much going on already with a fantasy book. You know, new world building you have to do, a lot of names that are unfamiliar, introducing characters. I don't need to know what a side character is thinking about the main character. Like, I don't need to be in the side character's head. And when it hops around from like paragraph to paragraph, like you're getting different points of view, I don't want it. And that's just a personal thing. I was telling my friend about this and she was like, that sounds amazing. And I was like, what? Like, no. like I cannot read a book like that. And she was like, oh, I just read one like that and I loved it. And I was like, fair enough. So it's obviously a personal, you know, preference, and that was just a no for me. But I thought I would mention it in case you're like my friend and you will like enjoy that type of point of view. Maybe you should check out this book. I don't know, I can't tell you anything else about it. And then the last two books I have to talk about are from a series that I started reading, and this was another book. So I went to the library with my friend and we each we walked out of that library with like so many books. Like we were just like, ooh, we're so abundant. Like look at all these books we get to read. So I had picked out 4 books, and this one was one that I had never heard of before. I just saw the cover and it was intriguing, and it was kind of funny to me. Obviously the cover will be up here, but it's kind of funny to me because I actually hate when romance books put the people on the cover, because then if you're reading the book in public or like in front of anyone, they're gonna know that you're reading like a romance book. And I hate when I'm reading in front of people and people are like, oh, what are you reading? I hate answering that question because I'm like, you're not going to like the book that I'm reading, so like I don't want to talk to you about it. Do you know what I mean? Like you're just sort of like, I don't want to tell you. But this cover was just so like beautiful that it caught my eye, and then I read the little, you know, inside flap and I was like, okay, I'm gonna read it, and I just won't read it in front of anybody. But it is The Bride of the Shadow King by Sylvia Mercedes, and I read that one, and I read the second book, which is Vow of the Shadow King, and I enjoyed this series. I haven't finished it. There is a third book. I have not read it yet. I will. But this was a really, like, I was like, wow, I can't believe I just like randomly picked this out at the library. It was just really good. So the main character, you get kind of a sense immediately in the book. So she is traveling with her brother. I can't remember her name. Farain, I think is how, I don't know if I'm saying that right. Farain. So she's traveling with her brother, and you get the sense that A, her brother is a complete asshole, and B, that she has been basically shunned by her family. And I think you find out pretty early on in the book why she's been shunned by her family, but she's traveling back to her her family, like the castle they live in, because, you know, her family is the, you know, monarchy or whatever, like her dad is the king and all that. She's traveling back to the castle, the capital city of the kingdom that they live in, to basically convince her younger sister to marry the guy that her dad has selected for her. And because they're trying to do a, you know, an alliance with this king from this other kingdom, and the king that Farain's dad wants her sister to marry is a fae king. So the sister doesn't want to marry him because, you know, they're different species and she doesn't know what to expect and all of that, and she also just doesn't want to marry some random dude. So Farain is traveling back because she has a, you know, she's really close with her sister, and if anyone can convince, I believe her name is Ilseville? What is it called? Oh, Ilseville, I think that's how you say it. If anyone can convince her to marry this dude, it's her older sister. So as Farain and her brother are traveling back to the castle, their carriage gets attacked by these fae that are riding unicorns who have like flaming unicorn horns that are also poisonous. So the world build, I really enjoyed the world building. It was very unique. And they're saved by none other than the Shadow King, who is the dude that Ilsabel and Farin's dad is trying to make Ilsabel marry. So then the Shadow King and his people escort Farin and her brother back to the castle. And as they're, you know, going back to the castle, they're kind of hitting it off a little bit. I was a little worried it would be insta-lovey, but it's not, which was nice. And anyways, so they get back to the castle and Farin's kind of like keeps bringing up like the whole ride to the castle and everything. She keeps bringing up her sister because she's like, well, you're gonna marry my sister. That's your only option. But he was kind of like presented with like the other king was saying like, you can pick from my 3 daughters kind of a thing. So he's like, oh, but I like you. But she makes it very clear, like, you gotta marry my sister. You can't marry me. You gotta marry my sister. That's your only choice. And so all that to say, through a series of events, I don't want to spoil anything, Farin ends up having to take her sister's place. I feel like I can't say anything else without spoiling things, so I'm just not gonna say anything else. I personally really loved this book. The Shadow King and his people live in a realm that's like underground, and they're having like earthquakes due to something going wrong with kind of like the magic in the realm. Like there's kind of a mystery of like why they want this alliance with these humans who have like these mages that have magic, and they want to use those mages to help with their thing, and then the humans need the Shadow King and his people to fight a war for them because they have these fae people with the unicorns that are, you know, attacking them. And very intriguing. I don't know, the world building I was very impressed with. The romance I also really enjoyed because it's a little bit of a slow burn, and there's just, I don't want to spoil anything, but it's like, I don't know, it was pretty good. I really enjoyed it. I would definitely recommend this series, and if you're looking for like a good romantasy series, I just thought this one has a lot of like thought put into it. I will say the Shadow King dude, I forget his name. I think it's Vor, yeah, it's Vor. The Shadow King, Vor, he's a little annoying in certain parts. I've noticed that he will like blame other people for his own mistakes, but he usually ends up apologizing for them later. So I'm like, okay, I'll let this slide. I also want to mention, just because again, this was something I saw in some of the Goodreads reviews, that people were not expecting this book to be as dark as it turned out to be. I would not say it was dark at all. It's your average romantasy type of thing. And literally in the very first chapter, they're attacked and people do die. So it's not like a cozy, lighthearted, whimsical, you know, low stakes book. Like, no, like it's a romantasy book, and the fantasy elements, like, they're high stakes, people will die, you know, wars will be fought, like, yeah, it's not one of those cozy books where like you know, the stakes are very low and nothing bad ends up happening kind of a thing. So I don't know why people thought that, because like literally in the first chapter, these fae unicorn riders come out of nowhere and start killing people. So I don't really know why people expected it to be like a lighthearted thing. And then because there's things that happen in halfway through the book where you like, people were like, oh my God, like I wasn't expecting that and I'm so devastated. And it's like, but where in like the book did you not read the beginning of the book? Like, no shade to those people. It was just a weird thing because I thought that the author very clearly set the tone of the book, that like you should expect things to go wrong. You should expect some bad things to happen occasionally. But anyways, check your trigger warnings. I do want to say, I don't know if this book listed trigger warnings, because I feel like that's something that more often happens with indie published books. I don't know if the like traditional publishing has kind of caught on to that yet. I would just double check the trigger warnings if you're able to. I don't think, again, it wasn't a dark romance by any means, but there are, you know, mature elements that some readers might not be okay with. But overall, I wouldn't say it's like, it wasn't that dark in my opinion, and that it's not, it should not be considered a dark fantasy. It's just your kind of average romantasy. Okay. So yeah, I read the first 2 books in that, and I would definitely recommend them. Again, if you're, you know, if you're somebody who loves, you know, Fourth Wing, Iron Flame, ACOTAR, like, yeah, I would say you probably would enjoy this. I will say, like, ACOTAR and Crescent City, in my opinion, are like fantasy with romance in them. Fourth Wing is more, I think, more of a romantasy, in my opinion, I'd say, especially after reading Iron Flame. And yeah, these books that I just mentioned, definitely romantasy. But I really enjoyed them, and I think if you like, so, you know, hopefully we'll get to a point where you guys know, you know, we know which books we have in common, and you can kind of figure out, like, if you should take my recommendations or not. But yeah, I think that's kind of where I'm going to call it, because I've already, the last book that I read was The Iron Flower, not Iron Flame, The Iron Flower, this book, which we already talked about. So I want to briefly chat about some of the books that I'm going to be reading upcoming. The one I'm currently reading, I did actually start this, but this is a book that I own, and then some of my library books came in. I could, like, was like, okay, let me finish those first. So I'm only a few chapters into this one, but this is the book that I will be focused on next. It is The Bone Shard Daughter by Andrea Stewart, and I have had this book sitting on my bookshelf for so long. I don't know, I was so excited when I bought it, and then I don't know, I have had so many reading slumps the past few years, and just, you know, didn't always have a lot of energy to read, so it just kind of sat there and I kind of forgot about it. And then when I was at the library with my friend and we were just looking through books, I saw both of these just sitting there, and I was like, I have the first one, and the first one wasn't at the library, but these 2 were just there. So I was like, I have the first one, these 2 are here, this is a sign to get these books, and I'll just read the whole series. I think it's a trilogy. I don't know if there are more books. If there are, I will find them at the library, but I'm going to work on reading this one. How many chapters am I into this? Literally on chapter 3. So not very far. This is a multiple point of view book. I think there's at least 3 characters, 3 different points of view. I'm not entirely sure. I think I've only gotten to 2 of them, and I'm intrigued. So the premise of the book is that the main character has lost her memory, and she's supposed to be the heir to the emperor, who's her dad. But because she lost her memory, he's not so sure that she should be the heir anymore. So she's trying to, like, get back that title, so that she can, you know, take over. And she's also, I think, trying to kind of figure out, you know, her memory issue, like trying to get her memories back. So, and then it's something to do with, like, everyone that lives in this empire is required to give a shard of bone to the emperor, I believe, and he uses those bones to make these creatures that he can control. And I don't know if there's other magical things that he can do. I'm still learning about the world building and all of that, but it's really unique. I'm hoping to, you know, read all 3 of these books this month. And I do have some other books that I have checked out, ebooks from the library, that I'll be reading as well, including there is one that someone had recommended to me. I'm going to try and read that this month. We'll see. it might be nice to read in between these like bigger fantasy books, because the one that was recommended to me was a contemporary romance, so it might be nice to kind of throw it in as a little break with, you know, reading these bigger books. And then I do have some holds that if those come through at the library too, I'll probably have to work those into my TBR as well. But that was my knit chat. I should have put in like a progress keeper. I don't think I got super duper far, but that's okay. It's hard to talk and knit at the same time for me anyways. But yeah, I hope that this was interesting. This is my first time, like, I feel like making book content. So actually that's a lie. I think I've done it before, but like a really long time ago. But yeah, I don't really know. I hope I didn't talk, like, I hope it was interesting. I hope it was interesting. I tried not to give any spoilers. Like, everything that I told you about the books was all just stuff that like happens in the beginning. So it's like, you know, it's stuff that you could get out of just reading like the little synopsis of a book. So hopefully that was fine. And then yeah, I was just trying to kind of give you my overall thoughts and like if I liked the book or not. And I'm just, you know, hoping that if you read the books that, you know, if you've read some of these books that you kind of enjoyed hearing my thoughts on them. And then if you haven't read them, that, you know, you can take them as recommendations or not recommendations. But yeah, I was talking for a really long time. So anyways, the next one should hopefully be shorter. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed, and please let me know what books you have read recently, especially if you really loved them. If you have any recommendations for me or any books that you would want me to read and then talk about in this, definitely let me know. If you were knitting on something while watching, let me know what you were working on. And I hope that this was fun. I hope it was interesting. If you want me to keep making these videos, definitely leave me a comment and give me a thumbs up so that I, you know that you enjoyed it. If there's anything that you feel like would help with like the structure of this video, like anything you would want me to do a little bit differently or add in or anything like that, please let me know. But yeah, other than that, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. I hope that this kept you company while you were doing some knitting or crocheting or whatever it is that you're doing, or maybe you just like book content, I don't know. But anyways, thank you so much for watching. Happy crafting, happy reading, and I will see you in my next video.
Alright, this is a song that I wrote about falling too fast, but I wouldn't know anything about that. I don't wanna lose my grounding, so you catch me not responding, and I press my lips together so you don't find any answer.